a quorum call?
We are not.
Thank you, Mr. President. Last November, the American people returned President Donald Trump to the Oval Office with a mandate to restore common sense in government. And in many ways, this common sense was most needed on the issue of protecting women and girls. After 4 years where President Biden waged a war on women's sports, the message from voters was clear. No more biological men competing in women's athletics. No more stolen records and medals, and no more invasions of privacy, humiliation, and harm for our nation's incredible female athletes. To be certain, President Trump has delivered on the mandate. On Inauguration Day, the President issued an executive order that affirms the federal government's position that there are only two sexes, male and female. This is a position grounded in biological reality, not gender ideology. Last month, the President also signed an executive order that bans biological males from competing in women's sports. It was an honor to join President Trump at the signing ceremony, along with the brave young women and girls who have spoken out for fairness, safety, equal opportunity, including one of those female athletes, Tennessee's Riley Gaines. The terms of the order are simple. If you allow men to compete in women's athletics, you will lose your federal funding. To no one's surprise, the order is getting results. Right after President Trump signed it, the NCAA, which oversees more than 530,000 student athletes, announced that it would comply with the order. For more than a decade, the nation's largest athletic association allowed men to compete in women's events. It will be a top priority of mine to ensure that this injustice never happens again and that the NCAA will fully adhere to the executive order. While the vast majority of states are complying, there are some states, blue states, like California and Maine, that are vowing to fight President Trump over the order. The message they are sending is clear. Democrats are willing to risk millions in federal funding for schools to uphold their radical far-left ideology that claims there are no differences between men and women. The American people know better, and so do the more than 3 million female high school and college athletes who deserve every single opportunity to succeed. They work hard, they train hard, they set their goals, they compete, and they work to succeed. To celebrate all of these incredible accomplishments from these 3 million high school and college athletes, I'm asking for unanimous consent for my resolution to establish October 10th, the 10th month, 10th day, recognized by the Roman numerals XX, like the female sex chromosome, as American Girls in Sports Day, setting aside a day to recognize the accomplishments of 3 million high school and college female athletes. In addition to celebrating female athletes, this resolution calls on sports governing bodies across the country to protect women and girls in sports. There is absolutely zero reason for Senate Democrats to oppose this resolution, and here is the reason why. We have a New York Times Ipsos poll that tells the story on this. 79% of the American people, including 67% of Democrats, want to make certain that female sports are for girls and women. Those numbers, 67% of Democrats, 79% of all Americans say they are with us. They want to protect women and girls in sports. They want to make certain that they have the right to compete, the right to train, the right to do team building, and the right to succeed and be recognized for it. So, Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation be discharged from further consideration, and the Senate now proceed to S-Res 21. Further, that the resolution be agreed to, the preamble be agreed to, and that the motion to reconsider be considered, made, and laid upon the table.
Is there an objection?
Mr. President.
The senator from Connecticut.
Mr. President, reserving the right to object. So as I understand it, this bill, this resolution seeks to establish an American Girls in Sports Day. And obviously that sounds like a really good idea. Until you read the resolution and you realize that this resolution actually has virtually nothing to do with the history and the current reality of girls playing sports. And instead, it's just another attempt by Republicans to pretend that the biggest threat to this country is transgender kids or gay kids or drag shows. Republicans don't want to talk about rising costs, about rising grocery prices, rising gas costs. They don't want to talk about the cratering reputation of America in the world. They don't want to talk about the fact that the stock market is crashing because of the disastrous economic policies of this president. No, as usual, it's transgender kids and drag shows that are causing all the problems in America. How do I know that this bill isn't an honest attempt to celebrate girls in sports? Well, first, if you really cared about girls in sports, you'd know that we actually already have a national day. It's February 7th. It's called National Women and Girls in Sports Day. It was signed into law 40 years ago by President Reagan. The sponsors of this resolution were so eager to shame transgender kids that they didn't even check to see if there was already a day. Now, folks are going to say, well, Democrats objected to an American Girls in Sports Day. Well, that's like bringing a resolution before the floor to declare June 27th Christmas. And when Democrats object, Democrats are anti-Christmas. Second, if this bill was really about girls in sports, it would celebrate girls in sports. But this resolution isn't about that. The resolution, if you read it, is just about this one issue: transgender athletes. And frankly, that's an insult to the thousands of girls who do play sports. 99% of them are never going to compete against a transgender athlete. I'm not saying this isn't an issue that's worth spending a little bit of time on, but let's be clear. A female high school athlete in this country is more likely to be killed by a falling object than to lose a competition to a biological male. If this resolution was really about celebrating girls in sports, instead of just trying to bully and shame transgender kids, then maybe somewhere in the resolution it might talk about Patsy Mink, who successfully championed the passage of Title IX. Maybe it'd mention iconic women athletes who broke barriers like Billie Jean King or Althea Gibson or Catherine Switzer or Pat Summitt. Maybe you'd talk about the iconic sports teams that put women in sports on the national stage, like Louisiana Tech or the U.S. women's soccer team. Maybe it would actually tell the story of how over the last 50 years we've gone from 300,000 girls in high school sports to 3.4 million today. But it doesn't do any of that. The text of this resolution isn't about the history of girls and women entering high school and college sports. It's not a celebration of those iconic teams and athletes. Instead, this resolution is just a tactic, another one, to scare and mislead the public and to bully vulnerable kids. And that's the reason that I'm on the floor once again to object.
Mr. President.
The objection is heard. The senator from Tennessee.
Mr. President, I find my colleagues' comments so very interesting, and I think it would have served him well, Mr. President, to actually read the resolution. So I'm going to read part of it so that my colleagues know what this does, because it does talk about celebrating these athletes. And here you go. Whereas athletic participation has an important positive impact on young girls, improving their physical health, self-confidence, and discipline. Women have been responsible for some of the greatest athletic feats in the sports history of the United States, from the Olympic Games to professional competition. He wanted to make certain that some of these greats like Pat Summitt and Our Lady Vols are recognized. Absolutely, that is what we're doing. Whereas female athletes have served as inspirations for generations of women and girls. And then we talk about Title IX. We talk about the fundamental biological differences between men and women that put women at a competitive disadvantage in sports and jeopardize their safety during competition. And 79% of the American people agree with this. And then we go through, since 2003, men have displaced women and girls from over 950 championship titles, medals, scholarships, and records that they should have rightly won, including at least 28 women